Now, any politician running for high office is desperate for name recognition. Well, that's one thing that Pakistan's Imran Khan didn't have to worry about. Already idolised as one of the greatest cricketers ever to play the game, he swapped the flamboyant celebrity lifestyle for the world of populist politics. And it's a decision that seems to have paid off. His party has apparently swept to victory after Wednesday's general election. But if you thought this would be a coronation for a man with legendary sporting status, then think again. Every other party is crying foul, alleging ballot rigging. So where does this leave the country then? Let's get a unique perspective on all of this. Reham Khan is an author and journalist, and she's also Imran Khan's ex-wife. Joins me in the studio now. Reham, thank you so much for joining us. You obviously have had an intimate relationship with Imran Khan through your marriage in the past. You know the measure of the man. We all know him as a great cricketer. Can he be a great leader?
Well, I think everyone in Pakistan who hasn't known him in an intimate fashion, I think he's been a part of all of our lives for the last 40 years. He's been a celebrity, he's brought the World Cup home. And some of the failings that we've noticed over the years are the fact that he can be very, he seemed to be very impulsive and sometimes very rash. My view, of course, I have some inside info. And the problem is when you want things very desperately, then there's certain compromises that you will make. And suddenly some of the compromises we've seen recently in the last few months have been quite shocking. Now, it doesn't come as a shock to me because I have that little insight, but it has been shocking to his followers and as an ideological supporter of his party, because remember, I voted for him in 2013 before I married him, and we've been let down on several occasions. And for example, the sort of people who've joined the party, they're not exactly anti-status quo. He seems to have collected all status quo. So it's desperation which is upsetting for us.
I've heard you mention in the past that Imran Khan saw this as his birthright, this becoming Prime Minister or this political leadership. You talked a little bit about the compromises he may have had to make in climbing the ladder. Do you think he's completely compromised his political integrity and the man that you knew when you married him?
Well, you see, when I married him, it was just like an extension of my vote, so it was like a personal vote, that I believe in you and I'm going to support the mission. What I saw was exactly what's happening, what everyone's seeing today. For example, somebody who's obviously very liberal in his personal life and not his past, but his, time with me, and even until recently, for him to use the blasphemy card, for him to use the religious, the extreme right card, it's not what the party stands for, or at least we didn't think that that is what the party stood for. Also, again, the anti-status quo narrative, so his rhetoric doesn't match his actions. For example, we've just seen the speech when he sort of self-proclaimed the prime ministerial role for himself. It said, he said all the right things. You can't find fault with it. But I know that we've seen this so many times before. The first time that I interviewed him back in 2013, he said that he would convert the Chief Minister's house into a library and the grounds would be open for women. He promised all these things for women's rights. And in the last 5 years, we've not been able to get a women protection bill in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
So a lot of the criticism then against him is that he is a military puppet and that he's in the hands of the mullahs as well. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would go a step further and say he is the ideal puppet, because when you want something so desperately and when you've been repeatedly in public compromising on ideology, and this was the thing with us as well, a lot of people say, well, why the breakup, what happened? And I keep telling them that I couldn't compromise on principles. So I couldn't compromise that you talk about anti-corruption, but there are corrupt people in your party. You talk about there's cronyism in other parties, but what's happening, there's Jahangir Khan Tareen who's disqualified. The Supreme Court has taken a decision, and you saw him even in the speech that happened yesterday. So, cronyism, status quo, corruption, he's let us down on so many occasions. And with him being the puppet, it's just that I feel that he wants it so desperately that he's going to compromise on a lot of things where Pakistan has moved ahead. So certainly we don't have that sort of extremist religious feeling in Pakistan in 2018.
You will understand, though, that there'll be a lot of people who will be watching this and thinking that you perhaps have an axe to grind, given the fact that he is your ex-husband as well. Can you not be excited for Pakistan, the fact that it's moved away from this dynasty politics and that suddenly it's someone fresh with new ideas?
Well, I mean, I would be if I didn't know a little bit more. But even if you just put aside the fact that I have inside info, so look at the facts. So for the last 6 months, for example, he first puts in a serial rapist, a gang rapist, in his party, and we make a lot of hue and cry, and then he says, "Oops, I made a mistake." So even if it isn't intentional, isn't that lack of competency? I'm sorry, but I don't take that as an excuse. Again, the radical element as well, and we've just seen that he's not in power yet, and he's already on a personal vendetta with people already appointed. So I'm really worried about the fact that what is he going to stand up for? Is he going to, for example, stand up for women's rights? So the things that I'm saying are those things that are in the public eye. I'm not talking about the things that I've put in the book, but of course in the book I give you an insight. For example, if he's selected a candidate that everyone has had a problem, I give you the inside info of what exactly happened. So, you know, I don't have a personal vendetta, and I'm not happy for Pakistan because it's not Imran. If it wasn't Imran, it's actually, there would be another puppet. So for me, Imran is the way the rigging has happened. It's been so blatant to show very clearly who the boss is, and the boss is neither Imran or any other politician, and that's the worry that I have as a Pakistani citizen.
You certainly do have a very unique insight, and we appreciate you sharing that with us, Reham. Thank you very much indeed for coming on.